What's up, guys? It's Sane Prince here. Hey, I just wanted to show you guys real quick something I figured out. It is how to make Retroarch live bubbles. So as you know, I've already hacked my Vita, and I have, I have Retroarch, and I have Adrenaline, and then I also have the Adrenaline Bubble Manager. But in the past, Retroarch has not been able to use VPK bubbles until now. So I wanted to show you guys, like if we look here, I've got Game Boy bubbles and I've got Game Boy Advance. This will also work with Super Nintendo, anything like that. And I'll just show you guys one real quick. So you just click on it. Let me turn this up a bit. And what this does is it boots right into your ROM instead of having to go into Retroarch and then go and find your ROM in there. This allows you to have your games right on your live area, and it is awesome. Takes a little bit of work though, so I'm gonna walk you guys through the process, okay? And if you notice, everything comes up, it plays fine, it plays perfectly, okay? So I'm gonna close out of this. All right, so what you have to do is you actually have to make a VPK for each of your games. So you'll do them one by one, and you have to create the assets. And I know that sounds like it's a big deal, but I'll walk you guys through it and I'll show you how to do the process, okay? I'm gonna switch over and we're gonna go into Vita Shell, and I'm gonna get it plugged in real quick. Okay, so I've got Vita Shell, and I'm gonna plug it in. Okay, got it plugged in. It is connected. Now I'm gonna bring you guys to my PC and kind of show you guys my process here, okay? Just stick with me. I'm gonna try and make this video as short as possible, all right? But it is kind of a process, and I'll leave all the links in the description below, okay? So, first off, you're gonna need the RetroBuilder. And this is what you're gonna be able to make all your Vita bubbles in. And let's see if I can get that a little bit closer here. Okay. You have to forgive me, it's kind of hard to do this. I don't have like a professional setup or anything. But first off, you're gonna need your images, your assets. So I'm gonna just bring that, widen it out a little bit. We'll put that there, and then I'm going to do, for the demonstration, we're going to do Final Fantasy VI, and it's going to be the GBA version, okay? So I'm looking for a couple of images, like here's a good box art, here's a good box art, so I'm just looking for a box art for the first one. Okay? And what I'd like to do is actually make an individual file for it, so I'll have all these backed up. And it needs to be renamed Icon 0. And I'll get to that here in a little bit, but it does need to be named Icon 0. You can either do it now or you can do it later, but you're gonna have to rename it that. And then I'm going to take another image that I want to use as a banner, and I'm going to name this one background, or BG, just BG, okay? Now, RetroArch does not accept JPEGs, okay? So it does not accept JPEGs. It's not gonna work if you try and do a JPEG, okay? So I'm going to transfer them over to PNGs. This is a PNGOO. This came with the builder, all packaged together, so you shouldn't have to go very far to find it, okay? And then what we do here, I find, it's gonna be quicker actually to just go here. Go and find your images, and then I've got my two images here. Okay, I'm gonna take them both and I'm going to drop them in PNG Go, okay? Now what I'm doing is output to the same directory and output even if the file is larger than original. And I should have prefaced this before, but if you're running RetroArch, it must be version 1.8.9 or higher, okay? If it's not 1.8.9 or 1.9.0, it's not going to work. The firmware is not compatible, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and add these files, and I'm turning them into PNG files. So these are the JPEGs, we can get rid of them. And I know it's kind of a complicated process, but I'm gonna leave a description on how to do it in the description of the video. It's a link to the original article and you can check it out, okay? All right, so next thing I'm gonna need to do is get an icon, which I know this is Game Boy Advance and I've used the Game Boy Advance icon. So I found this icon here. We will paste it. So I found this online, but you can use any images, any icons you want. It's really not a big deal. This is the one that I went with. This is the style that I wanted. So, you know, you do whatever you want to do, okay? But they do have to be PNGs and they do have to be a certain size, and we'll go over that now. So for the background, if you notice, the size of this file or the size of this picture is 281 by 179. So we need to resize it, okay? So I'm opening it up. And this is just photos on window. And then you can come up here, resize. And then I'm gonna define a custom size, okay? You'll have to uncheck maintain aspect ratio. And I know this needs to be 318 by 159. Now this is, for some reason, this is the key number that I've gotten to work. But you know, you guys can try a little bit bigger and see if it works. You'll know as soon as you try and install the VPK if it works or not. And so what this is gonna do is I'm gonna save it to the same file and I'm going to overwrite the file that's in there. Now this may seem like it's not an important step, but it is. This is probably the most important step and it's probably the most complicated part, okay? All right, so we've got the background, that's done. Now that is, if it'll update the size, 318 by 159, okay? All right, so for icon 0, this one is 225 by 225. So this one needs to be 128 by 128. This is important, remember. Your VPKs will not work unless they're the correct size. Okay, 128 by 128. I'm gonna save a resized copy and I'm just gonna overwrite the one that's already in there. Okay, now my startup PNG, it's already done. I'm just copied this one over from another Game Boy Advance, but the size for this one, you're gonna do the same process. It's 280 by 158, okay? This one also needs to be a PNG and it needs to be named startup.png. All that is important. Okay, so once you've done all that, you've got your background, your icon 0, or your BG, your icon 0, and your startup. You can take it and go into your RetroBuilder. Okay, so RetroBuilder, and this is contents, build batch, eboot, example, blah, blah, blah. So we need to put the files into contents, and if you notice, I already have background, BG, icon, and startup, okay? So I'm gonna replace all those because that's an old one that I did. Just gonna drag and drop them over, replace. I know that they're the right image size, okay? I know they're the right image size, but they need to also be the right file size. So your file size, if it's too large, it will not work, okay? So this is also important. Don't skip these steps. None of these steps are skippable, okay? Trust me, I tried it, it don't work. So take your 3 images, and right here where it says drag PNG here to reduce palette to 2.56, take that and drop them there. What that's gonna do is it's gonna create a copy of those images, but it's gonna reduce the file size and rename them. So The original image for BG was 54 kilobytes. It got reduced to 26 kilobytes, okay? That's a huge reduction. Same thing with icon, 31 to 12. And then this one I had already done, so I didn't even need to do that, but I just wanted to show you guys. Okay, so we're gonna delete the originals here. I'm just gonna delete those out. And now we have to rename the copies, okay? Because it's gonna reference the file name bg.png. I'm on a wireless keyboard and it's not always great. Okay, so then we got icon 0, and you're just gonna remove this -fs8, okay? And then for this one here, same thing with startup. Okay, so now what we've done, we've reduced the image size, we've reduced the file size. Both of those things are important. And now we're going to establish which ROM we're gonna be accessing. So I'm going to go into my Vita. Okay, this is my Vita through Vita shell. And there's a couple things that are important here. First and foremost, your ROMs. Wherever you have your ROMs located, remember the file location here. Sorry about that. Remember the file location. So I'm in UX0 ROMs, Retroarch ROMs. Okay, this is where I have mine. Yours may be different, but just make sure you know where they're at. GBA, and then I'm going down to Final Fantasy VI for the Game Boy Advance, okay? So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to copy this line. This is the actual Game Boy Advance file. It's the actual GBA file, okay? So I'm gonna copy that. And I know that the path is UX0, RetroArch ROMs, GBA, okay? So what I need to do here, we're still in the builder, contents, come down, this right here, this file, ROM text, you should change this to your ROM pathway, okay? UX0, RetroArch ROMs, and then it's gonna be changed, okay? So I'm gonna change that to GBA, okay? And then it goes directly into the ROM file itself. Sometimes you'll have a folder, then your ROM file will be in that. You have to include that. It's wherever the actual ROM file is going to be routed, okay? This is important. It's not something that if you mess up a single thing here, it won't work, okay? So, and that includes having your slashes a certain way. So I know for a fact that this way works, but when I tried the forward slashes, it actually didn't work. It routed me to RetroArch, but it wouldn't let me save my games and stuff. So keep that in mind, it's important. So I'm gonna save that. And then you also need the core text, okay? So for Game Boy Advance, I actually don't use Gambat libretro. So I'm not gonna need this, I'm gonna have to change that. So we're gonna go back into my Vita. Okay, now we're back on here. I'm going into UXO. And as long as you have the show hidden app or show hidden folders, show hidden files, you should be able to see app. And then scroll all the way down to Retro Vita, because this is gonna be the core that you use or the emulator that you use to play this particular file, okay? So for this one, I use GPSP_libretro. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy this exactly how it is. And then under the core text, I'm going to change it. Now, app0 is the location for your cores. So this is like just a shortcut. You don't have to do the UX0, app, Retro Vita, then this. You can actually just do app0 and bypass all that and paste in your core. So that's gpsp libretro.self. Okay, and then we're gonna save that file. Okay, it's saved. And I'm gonna copy the full ROM text just because it's gonna be easier than typing it in a second. Okay, now we've got all your images. Okay, these are gonna be your images. We got all your images, all done, resized, all that. That's perfect. We've got your ROM file pathway and we've got your core file pathway. Okay, so we're gonna go back to RetroBuilder And then right here it says build batch. That's what we're gonna do. Okay, so it brings up a command line. I'm trying. Okay, so for the command line, you want to enter, it's your first question is, your first insert is insert bubble name. Okay, so I'm just gonna put Final Fantasy, and I need to make sure all this typed. And then we'll just do Final Fantasy 6, okay, VI. Okay, so I like the way that looks. That's what my bubble is gonna have underneath it once I'm done. Final Fantasy 6, okay? You can name that whatever you want. This one's not picky, it's just whatever you want to name it. So do as you will. Hit enter. Okay, now it's asking for the full ROM path. This is your game. So I'd already copied it from earlier. It's UX0, RetroArch ROMs, GBA, Final Fantasy 6 Advanced, USA. All that is important. It has to be written exactly like it is, okay? Exactly. And keep in mind about your slashes. Make sure they're facing the right way, okay? So then I'm gonna hit enter. Then it says insert core path. Now we already did that to make it easy. So we're gonna go back into contents, and just so I make sure I get it right, I'm gonna copy this as well, okay? So it's app0 gpsp underscore libretro dot self, okay? And paste that in there, hit enter. All right, last thing. This is the final step here. So we've got insert bubble ID. It has to be 9 characters. It cannot be 8, it cannot be 10. Also, you have to use uppercase letters. So I'm gonna type in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So Final Fant, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, if you do another Final Fantasy game in the future, okay, you cannot use this same bubble ID code. So next time you need to do Final FFFF or something, it needs to be something different, okay? So use your judgment there, do what you will, then hit enter. All right, so now if you notice in RetroBuilder, it has now made us a Final Fantasy VII VPK, which is exactly what we need, and it clocks in at 87 kilobytes, which is great, because that's usually about what they come out to be, anywhere from like 80 to 115 I've seen. So now it's the moment of truth. I'm gonna bring up my Vita, I'm gonna go back to my UXO, and you can drop the VPK here if you have your other VPKs. Like for example, I have auto plugin, I have custom themes, all that. You know, you can do any of that, but I have mine in a special place. I've actually saved mine in my ROMs folder, and then under RetroArch VPKs, and then I have them organized here. That's personal preference. You don't have to do that. Just know where it's at, okay? So I've got Game Boy Advance VPKs, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the Final Fantasy, the new one, and drop it right in, okay? There it is, perfect. It's in there, so let's give it a try, okay? I'm gonna put you on pause and switch back to the Vita. Okay, we're back on the Vita, and I'm going to see if I can find that VPK. All right, so UXO, and then I save it in my ROMs, and then I save it in my VPKs, Game Boy VPKs. These are all the ones I've done in the past, and there's the new one right there, Final Fantasy VI VPK. Okay, so I'm gonna install the package, and hopefully this works. Okay, I did not get an error, so that's good. If you got an error there, I can almost guarantee you it's one of two things, okay? It's either gonna be you didn't resize your files, you didn't, or change them over to PNGs, you know, it's gonna be your images, most likely. If it's not that, then you're probably not on the correct version of RetroArch, okay? So you definitely need to check that out. It could also be your file path, so make sure you typed in your file path correctly, okay? Now we've got Final Fantasy VI's VPK, so we're gonna go back to our live area, scroll to the bottom page, and there it is. And it doesn't show it real well on my screen, but man, it looks good. It looks way better than it does on the camera. But, okay, so now what we're gonna do, we're gonna access it for the first time, okay? I'm gonna click on it, and there's all our images that we got, resized and everything. Looks pretty good. I'm gonna click on it, and it should boot right up into Final Fantasy VI. Let's see here. Perfect. That looks great. So it looks like everything's working great. Yep. Awesome. Now, if you get this far and you go to save, whether that's, using a save state and it doesn't save or whatever, it just says saving down here and it never loads, it may be because when you updated your RetroArch, and I came across this, when you updated your RetroArch, it changed where the saving file path is. And so you'll have to do the same, okay? But if that's not an issue that you came across, it's not a big deal. And if it is, just what you can do, and this is working, it looks like it saves, it loads, so awesome. Brand new VPK, brand new game I have on my live area. And again, I wanted to bring this to you guys because I hadn't seen anybody do a tutorial on this, so feel free to send this to Tech James or link me his video if he's already done this, but I hadn't seen it. And so I've got me a new VPK bubble. Now, like I was saying earlier, if you get that far and it boots into the game, then and it's just not saving, it's because where your save data is located changed with some of the cores and how RetroArch works. Your saves used to be in data, RetroArch, save files, and save states, right? What you'll have to do is go into these, copy the game save data that you want, just copy it, and then you can move back to where it's newly located, which is actually in the ROMs file, and then the saves are in the exact same file that the ROMs are in now. So keep that in mind, okay guys? So if you get to that point and saves aren't working, that's why. You shouldn't have to make a new VPK for that, but just wanted to give a heads up, okay? All right, well, I hope this helps you guys. I mean, I know it's a process. I know it's a thing. Not everybody's going to want to do this, but it really helped me because I wanted to have all my games here on my live area. And I had the PlayStation bubbles, the PSP bubbles, the Vita, obviously the Vita bubbles, but everything was all run through Bubble Manager, which was a much easier process, except RetroArch doesn't support it. Okay, so I'm sorry for the long video, but I wanted to show you guys how to do this. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email or something. I've got it in my bio, so just give me a shout. I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. All right, later.